Right. So we're just gonna wait for a few guys to join in, and I'm going to begin very soon. The time given is 5 p.m. and I've just started a bit early for you guys to just join in. I'm hoping you guys will get the notifications and will join in. And then we're gonna start our session today. And we have something really cool for you guys for this session and for the next session. So stay till the end for a good, nice reveal. Yeah. Okay, we are waiting for more people to join. And let's see, we have 8 viewers right now. I'm just going to wait for a few more people. So stay on for a bit and then we're going to begin. Today's session is going to be super fun and it's going to be super informative as well as we're going to be telling you how to review a smartphone and more importantly, how to write a smartphone review. It's not rocket science at all, but at the end of the day, it still requires careful observation and testing. So stay on. We're going to have a nice fun session today. We're going to start dot at 5 and the clock is ticking. It's 4:53 now. So let me know in the chat how you guys doing in this situation. I hope you guys are all safe and sound in your home, maintaining social distancing and the likes. And yeah, don't forget to wear masks every time you leave. Use your hand sanitizers generously and be careful is what I can say. These are all testing times and smartphone reviews can wait, but your life is again more important as of now. So that's there. Ah, we are now 2 minutes into our live session. I'll just be waiting for a few more people to join in, and we're gonna kick off this session dot at 5. So just hold on for a bit, maybe. Clock's ticking. Have you guys tried out the OnePlus 8 somewhere? Mobile tricks for you. Hello, 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 hello. How is it going for you? We're just waiting for a few more people to join, and we're gonna start dot at 5. My side, I'm pretty good. A little bit too bogged down with work. You know, it's work from home, but it's continuous work for us. Phones don't stop launching. There's regular updates happening in the tech world. COVID-19 is definitely not helping things at all. So the anxiety levels are a bit high for me. But yeah, I'm doing good. I'm making food on my own at my place and doing some bit of cleaning and all those things. So I think I'm learning a few new skills out here during the lockdown. Prashant, hi. How's it going? Jayendra, hi to you. We're just waiting for a few more people to join in, and then we're gonna start our session for today. And I hope you guys take away something important from this session. And even though you might not feel like writing a review of a smartphone, I believe the session today is going to help you guys zero down on the best smartphone that you guys are after when you're in the market for buying a new smartphone. So I think it's going to serve a lot of people, whoever is watching today. And you guys can also help amplify the uh, methods and testing things that you do. Mobile tricks for you? Yes, I do. I mean, it's not. Sometimes it's uneatable, but then I assure myself that okay, it's I made the food, so I should eat it and not throw it away. But most of the time, I do cook nice food. Yeah. Hi guys, a lot of you guys are now joining in. The chat window is flowing. First, one thing I want to let you guys know, I'm just going to be browsing through the presentation in the beginning, and then we're going to go to the questions, all right? So pay attention while I'll be explaining things as to how to run the benchmarks and what to look for in the benchmark scores, how to do your battery test, and how to do your camera, not your camera test, how to do your display test. Camera testing is going to be taken up by none and none, one and only our reviews editor, Swapnil Mathur. He's our in-house professional photographer, and his sessions are always super fun. So his session is scheduled on the 4th of June next week, and I'm hoping a lot of you guys will turn up for that session as well. Samar Pratap, that's a very good question. I am going to show you. You're going to be really surprised. It's not an iPhone, it's not a OnePlus, but what I'm using is an ROG Phone 2. So it's the Call of Duty World Championships is happening, and I just felt that the ROG Phone 2 will give me that edge that I'm looking for to qualify through the rounds. So the ROG Phone 2 is right now my phone of choice. I also have the iQOO 3 with me. It's the Snapdragon 865 phone on choice, and I've removed the iQOO UI on the phone, and I'm right now using a Microsoft UI that does look real nice and useful. So maybe you guys should try it out. It comes with a dark mode as well, Microsoft Launcher, and it also integrates really well with Windows 10. So yeah, Consumer Jockey, you were asking what product launches are we expecting in the near future? Well, there's a certain affordable OnePlus Z that's around the corner, I've heard. And there's the Mi laptops coming in, for which we are quite excited. I've checked them out in China when I was there covering some event, and it did seem pretty solid to me. And I'm quite stoked that Xiaomi is finally bringing them to India here. So that's one. The OnePlus Z is second, and there will be a bunch of new phones. But if you really ask me, the one that I'm really interested in is the ROG Phone 3 because I'm using the ROG Phone 2, and the features that have been built in the phone purely for gaming are really useful. And I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with the ROG Phone 3. Will there be anything new in there, or it just be refinements of the old thing? So yeah, that's good. Samar Pratap, you're using the Z1 Pro. That's an official PUBG Mobile phone. Can I ask what your rank on PUBG Mobile is using the phone and how good you're finding the phone in terms of usage? What about Halogen OS? Well, it's a third-party ROM that you can flash using with the help of our good friends over at XDA developers. And yeah, I haven't really tested it out. I've been out of the scene of third-party ROM flashing for quite some time now. I don't really get the time to, root and flash all the time again. But I'll tell you one cool story of when I used to own a HTC Wildfire S, and I was really pissed off at HTC that it stopped the update after Android Gingerbread. It never went on to Ice Cream Sandwich officially. But then again, friends over at XDA helped me out, and I managed to install Cyanogen, Paranoid Android, and all the RAMs, all the ROMs for and Ice Cream Sandwich back then. So that was my starting with smartphone testing of sorts, and then here I am here at Digit testing smartphones officially for you guys. So yeah, let's begin. It's 5 p.m. now. A lot of you guys must have joined in. And before we begin, I want to give you a quick lowdown on what this session of today is about. So it's basically an opportunity for you guys to become a Digit certified smartphone reviewer. Uh, so what perks that bring you? You get to be a part of the Digit Influencer University, which is basically our program to assist you to become a successful tech blogger or a YouTuber and basically stay inside smartphones or stay surrounded by all sorts of tech for you guys. And then you get invited to our office as well to test out the products that we receive for review. You can be offered a freelancing role based on availability or a full-time position. So what do you have to do for this? Um, so this, you just need to attend today's workshop and the one that's coming up next week. And then they will be circulating a Google form. It's right there in the description of this live session below. Inside the form, you guys can do your own review based on what we tell you today in this workshop. And if it meets our standards, we're going to give you a certificate that will certify that you are a smartphone reviewer that knows their things around, right? And you can also get invited to our office to test out the products that we receive firsthand. So that means the latest and the greatest that comes up in our test labs will be for yours to test. So we're going to begin for our session today. Let's see. Okay, let's begin. Oh, a lot of noise. I forgot to silence my smartphone actually. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. So sound is off, it's on vibrate, and we're ready to begin. So today's session is on how to test smartphones and how to review them actually, not just testing. Review is far more than testing, and how to actually write a review. So we go around taking the most important aspect of a smartphone. When the smartphone launches, the OEM usually stresses on some key factors on which the smartphone will be popular and will sell more units. That can be either the performance or the camera or even the design for that matter, right? So we first prioritize that part and then we move on to the more lesser important parts of the review. So some few basic points that I want to tell you guys. It's basically a cheat sheet to write a review of a smartphone in the most objective and the most scientific way. First is, of course, to keep it short and simple. Nobody really likes reading a big novel when they're out to, looking for buying advice around what to buy a new smartphone. You don't want to make them read a whole novel with like chapters and appendices and everything. So try keeping it short. A good ideal word count for a good smartphone review would be anything around 1500 to 2000 words. And that's also quite long. If you can make it even more concise, it's nothing better. As long as all your points get can come across to the reader. Then you should also test the specific claims that the OEMs make. Suppose an OEM comes out saying that the display on my smartphone is better than everyone else. How do you test that? That's the first thing you should be checking, because that's what the advertisements are going to tell the buyers, possible buyers in the market, and then they will be basically believing those advertisements and then buying the smartphone. That's where you come in. It's your job to test out those claims and tell whether the OEM is actually telling the truth or there's some terms and conditions applied to it. And then the final verdict that you arrive at after the testing should be definitive. It shouldn't be, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad. You shouldn't be doing that. Instead, list out the good ones, list out the bad points, and then ask the buyer to decide by himself. So that is how a verdict of the review should go out. And basically the primary goal of reviewing a smartphone is basically to tell your readers, your viewers, on what smartphone to buy when they're in the market to buy. No, there's no bad smartphone per se, which I told you guys in the last session. I don't know if you guys or most of you guys must have attended. Excuse me, most of you guys must have attended, but you may not have understood what I've said back then. But this time I'll be much more clearer. The primary goal is to make a person who's looking to buy a smartphone decide on the perfect smartphone for himself. There are no bad smartphones, there are no absolutely best smartphones. Every smartphone might be better for some users, while it might not be really good for other users. An example would be the ROG Phone 2 in my hand. It's great at gaming. I mean, no matter what game I throw at it, it just runs perfectly. But every time I try to take a photo with this phone, I kind of miss owning like a Samsung S20 or an iPhone for that matter. So there are phones that do the camera bit really good. There are phones that do the gaming bit really good, and then there are phones that can actually do pretty well on all standards and all segments. So our session today will be divided into three parts. First would be performance testing. Second would be battery testing, and third we're going to take up display testing. So let's get on to performance testing first, right? Performance testing, what does it do? So, in my opinion, this is the most exciting part of the smartphone review. You get to run a whole lot of tests and get like arrive at objective scores that you can compare with other smartphones and then arrive at a conclusion whether this one's better than the other. But then again, benchmarks are not like the end all and be all of a smartphone review. Most of the times, there are smartphones that are known to cheat on benchmarks by whitelisting the benchmark app so that the CPU cores always run at peak speed. So you get a higher score on benchmarks, but in the real world, when you're actually trying to record a 4K video or trying to play a game, your the sustained performance that you saw on your benchmarks won't be replicated. So don't completely rely on benchmarks, but this is one very good place to start. So and also the raw performance of the smartphone that you will be testing using this benchmark, it's the one that determines how the smartphone will hold up when the going gets tough. So we use a bunch of benchmark apps and to check for various aspects of the performance, and that includes the CPU, GPU, and the storage. I mean, the RAM is also there, but then it also depends on how you use the smartphone. So there's no really objective way of testing how the RAM of a smartphone works. So we're going to begin with CPU benchmarks right now. Let's see. Oops, my bad. CPU benchmarks. Here we are. So the apps that we use to test for CPU performance is Antutu. Of course, everybody uses Antutu. Then there's Geekbench 5 CPU benchmark for both single core and multi-core. And then we use this little known benchmark app called Mobile Expert 3. And not a lot of people use it in our industry, but what it does is it gives you it assigns certain workloads that to the smartphone and basically calculates the time taken by the smartphone to crunch them. And these are like daily workloads, like creating a slideshow, recognizing faces, doing encryption, and all those things. PC Mark is also more or less the same, just a different test bench. And I kind of like what PC Mark does, which is why I've kept it included in this list. So, what do you look for when you're running these benchmarks? So, the CPU numbers actually help in determining how your smartphone is compared to some other smartphone in this price range. So, your apps like Antutu and Geekbench will assign like specific numbers or scores for that matter. And you can basically take another smartphone with a similar specification, similar hardware, and compare how these two are different. Now, keep in mind there's usually an error margin of 10% that you get every time you rerun the benchmark, the 10% difference in scores. So don't be too harsh when you're judging by these numbers. A good 100-point difference means that the two phones are practically very similar. There's no difference at all in performance. Now, you have Mobile Expert, like I said, it calculates the time taken to run the test. So a lower score on these apps are always better. So that's our CPU analysis. We will move on to the next one, which is GPU. That's right. For GPU, we do like a couple of tests that includes 3D Mark and GFX Bench, and then we also play a lot of games. And that's not part of this presentation, the gaming bit, because we use this app called Game Bench, which a lot of you guys won't be able to have access to because it requires a $1,000 subscription every year. So we have that, and that's what we use to test our frame rates and stability numbers. But never mind, you can always use your own relative, place two phones side by side and then compare how they perform against each other. But as far as the GPU is concerned, we use 3D Mark, which 3D Mark Slingshot Extreme for that matter, in both the OpenGL and Vulkan. So there are two types of graphics support on Android right now, and Vulkan is actually a bit more strenuous on the GPU. So we test for both and see where the phones stand. Then we have GFX Bench. For that, we run three tests for that matter. Aztec Ruins, the high tier version for mid rangers, and the low tier version for the budget smartphones. And then you have the GFX Car Chase and the GFX Bench Manhattan 3.1. And all these are the on-screen tests that we run. There are also off-screen for these same tests, but then the off-screen won't really take into account, the display performance and and basically your display and the PPI and the resolution into account. It'll only take the GPU performance of the processor into account, which isn't of much use because the GPU is will render the pixels on the display, and it's the combination of the things that will determine how good the phone performs while you're gaming. So what do you look for? Well, smartphone GPUs, not a lot of OEMs, not a lot of chipset makers talk about what goes into making a GPU a good one, especially Qualcomm. They like to keep themselves tight-lipped about their Adreno GPUs. So the numbers that you see are really the only indication of a good GPU, right? So 3D Mark scores for both OpenGL and Vulkan test, they test for the overall graphics performance. So when you're playing a game, the kind of texture you're going to notice, the kind of rendering speed, frame drops, and everything, you can more or less get an idea running 3D Mark. And GFX Bench actually shows the time it takes by the phone, takes the phone to render a certain number of frames, or basically it you can do it the other way around as well. You can see how many frames it has managed to render in a given time. So that also gives you a quick idea of how fast the GPU of the phone is at rendering different workloads, right? That's GPU benchmarks for you guys. Now moving on to storage, this is also becoming quite important with the evolution of UFS storage. We went from eMMC to UFS 2 to 2.1 to 3, and now we're at 3.1. And there's significant gains in storage speed when you're moving from one module to another. We use the app called Andro Bench, which we use to test the read and write speeds of our storage modules. So there are basically quite a few tests, but what we look at are sequential read and write speed and random read and write speed, right? So what do you look for in them? This is really the fastest test to run on a smartphone. If it's a good UFS storage, it's gonna get done in a jiffy, basically. And a higher read-write speed indicates that your phone won't slow down when you're trying to open a heavy app or when you have too many things in the background and you're juggling between multiple apps. And you'll also notice a good bump in read-write speed when you're moving from an older UFS model to a newer UFS module, right? So that's the storage bit. We're gonna move on to the battery part of it. How do you guys like my presentation? I spent less than 1 hour making it. Well, battery testing, again, it's also really crucial to the buying decision. So, you can pack the phone with all sorts of hardware, but it's no good if it dies out by the middle of the day. So battery life is again a very crucial decision, but it's also really difficult to assign an objective battery life to a smartphone because my usage, for that matter, of a smartphone will differ from your usage. So the battery life that I might be getting on my smartphone might be different from what you'll be getting on the same smartphone. So how do you make it as objective as possible? Well, we're here to help you out there. We do this thing called a video loop test. It's not just us, a lot of people in the industry also run video loop tests. What we do specially is we standardize the video that we run on each smartphone. So we pick like one 1080p video. The duration isn't really of matter because you'll be looping it continuously. And we use VLC player to assign loops to it so that it ends and then it begins again, it ends, it begins again. And then we keep things like Wi-Fi and mobile data turned off. We set brightness at 100%. And then we use this app called Battery Log that's available on the Google Play Store. And to see how fast the battery drains, it basically records every time the battery drops by 1%. So, sorry. By the end of it, you will see that the battery log app will tell you just how long did the video loop test run before the phone went like 0%. So this will assign a good number to the battery life. But then this is not the only test that we run. So there's also our real world battery drain 4%. And then we play 30 minutes of a movie or a TV show on Netflix or Amazon Prime. And then again, note the battery drain during the session. And then we run Google Maps navigation with GPS turned on for 1 hour and then again we note the battery drain. Then we note them down in an Excel sheet, and then we create assign scores to each of them, and then we basically use a formula to determine how good the battery life of the phone is. But the battery life isn't the only thing that you should be looking at. The charging speed is also really important, because as the battery capacity increases more and more, we have now 6,000 mAh batteries. The charging speed is also important, so you don't keep your phone plugged in for long hours and not use it, right? So we have smartphones that offer like 65 watts of charging speed right now. And there's a phone in China, basically an iQOO phone, that can offer basically 90 watts of charging speed, which is insane, considering how fast the battery is going to top up. So to do the charging test, we keep things again as objective as possible. We drain the battery down to 1%, and then we plug in the charger that comes in the box. We don't use a third party charger. We use the charger that you get with the phone. And then we start a timer. And then we see just within 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes until 100% completion, just how long the phone takes to charge. And then we usually measure the battery percentage that has been charged after 15 minutes, after 30 minutes, and then after 60 minutes. So that's fairly easy. It's a bit lengthy process, but it just needs discipline. That's all. So yeah, that's the battery testing part, and now we are at display testing. Now this is again a very crucial, because you usually spend the most amount of time on a smartphone display. And that's the only, mostly the thing that you interact with, except for the camera. So having a good display is really essential, and a bad display, it ends up, breaking the experience quite a bit. The good example here is the Poco F1 that came out a couple of years ago. It came with a Snapdragon 845 chipset, but the display inside wasn't really the best of the best. So, at least I felt that the experience as a result became quite subpar despite having really fast performance, right? So, again, display testing a display is again requires special tools to generate color maps, to, have brightness meters and color meters and everything, so which I'm sure you won't have access to very easily. And in absence of those, I suggest you keep two smartphones in the similar price range launched around the same time, side by side, and compare using an app called Display Tester, right? The Display Tester app is available on the Google Play Store. You go download that app, you go to the test section and click on defective pixel. It's going to show you a bunch of solid color screens, and place two smartphones side by side and see which one looks better. The one that looks far more natural is the one that has a better display. If it looks a bit too saturated or a bit too warm or cool, then there's some tweaking that needs to be done to make the display palatable. Then you can also go to the real world photos under the test section, and then it's going to show you a bunch of standardized images which are not solid colors but actually images taken from a camera, and that again gives you a good idea of how the smartphone is able to reproduce colors on the display. And I suggest you keep again the two phones side by side, two phones of the same price range, launched around the same time, and compare. So that's our display test. And with that, we have, oh, this one last thing as well, the sunlight visibility, which is again quite important. And this is again a very simple test to do. All you have to do is just use the smartphone under the bright, hot sun, which isn't very hard to do right now, considering the whole of India is going through a very massive heat wave. So just go out, bear the sun for a few minutes, and try seeing or watching a video or opening an image to see how the color saturation changes. And it usually does change. I mean, you won't get the same saturation or same vibrance that you expect indoors when you take the phone outside in the open sun. You can also open an article, preferably ours, and see how sharp and visible everything reads. So that's going to give you a good idea on how the smartphone display works outdoors as well, which is something that you will need every time you step out. So having a good display, a bright display, is really important out here. So yeah, that covers more or less the major parts of doing a smartphone review. Um, we'll be taking on the camera a bit next week, and that's basically the second part of this workshop. And we'll also be telling you how to calculate a score for a review. So the session will be conducted by one and only our very own Swapnil Mathur, who is our reviews editor, and he's Digit's pro photographer. He's the one who takes all the cool product shots and all the cool camera samples that you see on our reviews page. And he's also a big science and statistics nerd. So his formulas that he has framed for every product category is what we use in our test labs to formulate our scores. So I'm going to leave the scoring part and the camera testing part in the good hands of Swapnil. And I really hope that you guys also join in on the June 4th for the session with him. So yeah, that brings me to the end of the presentation. I will be going back to taking your questions. So I can see a lot of you guys have put in your questions. So yeah, thanks for your compliments. I know the presentation looks good. I use this software called Prezi that helps me make all these cool slides. Right. So let's see what questions are there right now. Mm, oh, I say that there is no audio. Wow. Can I quickly this? Okay. Is the audio clear now, guys? I hope I didn't wasn't reading your comments. I was just going through the presentation. So if you guys must have missed something, I'll be happy to take that in the questions right now. So 30 minutes of movie from where we get review units. Akbar Goel, well, for review units, you need to be a certified reviewer for the brands to know that, you know your thing for them to send the review units. And you need to basically have a platform for to publish the review for which your users and viewers will get some information around the device. So this is a good place to start where you are right now. And once you do get a lowdown on how to do a smartphone review, I suggest you can open your own blog or your own YouTube channel and start reviewing smartphones that you have around you. I mean, you must have a lot of friends who will be using their own smartphones that will be different from each person to the other. You'll have your own phones, so that's a very good place to start, and you can probably take it further from there. And let's see what other questions. Best smartphone for gaming. I'll cross my fingers and say that it's the ROG Phone 2 in my hands that I find is the best for gaming. The 8 figures on the top of this is a game changer for me, especially when I'm playing Call of Duty Mobile. You should really see me sniping someday. Right. Swapnil fan here. Hey Rahul, I'll pass that message on to Swapnil when he reads it, and hope you guys join in the next session as well. So, read somewhere that fast charging may harm the battery life. Well, to an extent, yes, but then fast charging, the OEMs are also really careful of not, making the phone catch fire when charging at high wattage. So what they do is they do all the current draw and the current generation inside the adapter itself, and the thick wire that usually comes with the fast chargers, they carry the charge to the phone. And then there are mechanisms in the phone in place to prevent overcharging. And there's also this thing called trickle charging, which is really important because the battery is nearing full capacity,